Hello, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and where you're joining us from today. Welcome to Engineering for Change, or E4C for short. Today we're very pleased to bring you the latest in E4C's 2013 webinar series. Today's webinar was developed in collaboration with Emergent Engineers and Advancing, and our guest presenters are Ignacio, Garcia, and Bryse, Gaboury. My name is Yana, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. When I'm not moderating webinars, I work with Mechanical Engineers, where I am a senior program manager. I'd like to take a moment now to tell you a bit about today's webinar: Rural Development Consulting, Social Entrepreneurship, and Sustainable Development. One of E4C's topical focus structures, and we're glad to have some of the important issues related to this. To do engineers Before we get rolling, I'd also like to take a moment to recognize the coordinators of this webinar series generally. In addition to myself, we have Paul and actors of IEEE, along with Victoria Chung, who work on developing and delivering the webinar series. Thank you, team. If anybody out there has questions about the series, please contact us via the email address visible on the slide, webinars@engineeringforchange.org. It seems that we have a little bit of issues with audio. If the breaking continues, do please tell me. I will be able to dial back in with another number, and hopefully it'll improve. How about folks out there, if you can help me out? Is it still audio breaking up? It's improved, I'm here. I'll give everybody a second to let me know. Thank you for seeing me post one. I really appreciate that. Technology is sometimes a friend and sometimes a foe. So before we hand things over to our presenter, we thought it would be a great idea to remind you about Engineering for Change and who we are. E4C is a global community of almost 15,000 technically minded members, such as engineers, technologists, representatives from NGOs, and social scientists who gather to solve critical humanitarian challenges, whether in water, energy, health, agriculture, sanitation, or other areas faced around the world today. We invite you to join E4C by becoming a member. Team membership provides cost-free access to a growing inventory of and related information from all the members of our coalition, including professional societies like EWDUA, IEEE, SUI, and ASHRAE, as well as academic supporters such as MIT's D-Lab, international development agencies such as USAID and Practical Action, as well as access to a passionate, engaged community working to make people's lives better all over the world. Registration is easy and it's free. Check out our website, Engineering for Change, to learn more and sign up. I really appreciate the very specific feedback, guys. I see that 90% better. Hopefully it'll improve steady state, achieve in a few minutes. The webinar you're participating in today is one in Engineering for Change webinar series. This free, publicly available series of mindset showcases the best practices and thinking of leaders in the field who bring leading-edge technology and solutions to bear on global humanitarian and development challenges. Information on upcoming installments in the series, as well as archived videos of past presentations, can be found on the E4C webinars page. And you can see the URL right there, engineeringforchange-webinars.org. If you're on Twitter, I'd also like you to invite you to join the conversation with the hashtag E4C webinars. And of course, you can find our archives on YouTube if you would like to see this presentation again after today. E4C's next webinar will be on September 10th at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with Smart Global on the topic of supply chains and distribution of products. Our presenter will be Jackie Sensen, who is the co-founder of Smart Global. To register, please visit the E4C webinars page at the address you see listed. A few housekeeping items before we get rolling. Let's see where everyone is from today. I'm going to give you an example by showing in the chat window where we would like you to let us know where you're joining us from. Type in your location to let us know in the chat window. Any technical questions or administrative problems should go in the chat window as well. And also feel free to private chat to Holly or myself. You can also use the chat window to type any remarks you may have. However, during the webinar, please use the Q&A window, which is located immediately below the chat window, to type in your questions to the presenter. If you are to the audio broadcast and you encounter any troubles, try hitting stop and then start. If that does not work, you can use the call-in number for the teleconference. You may also want to try opening WebEx up in a different browser. So it looks like we have folks from all over the United States, from Garcia, also from Canada, Toronto. We have folks also from Malaysia, South Korea, all over the world. We're so glad you're with us, all the way from India and Germany, as well as from Arizona and Texas. Very cool to have you all on the line today, and hopefully the audio will improve. FYI to those of you who are in the United States, as well as in Canada, following the webinar, certificate of completion showing one professional development hour for those of you who have your professional engineering license. Please provide your full name and date that you completed, as well as the code that we will give you at the end of the session. Put that all together in an email and send it to eab-cuadmin@IEEE.org. That will to get your PDHs. As folks letting us know where they're from, thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce to you two webinar. We have Daniel Garcia, who is the co-founder and president of Emergent Engineers, whose mission is to foster collaboration between engineering professionals in North America and America. Daniel has more than 15 years of experience in the engineering and finance sectors, and his international development work has taken him to 3 continents, including 2 tours of duties with the Peace Corps in Nepal and Honduras, and several projects with Engineers Without Borders. He is a professionally licensed engineer in the United States, in the states of New York and Florida. And joining him today, we have Bryse Gaboury, who is the co-founder and managing director of Engineering. He has extensive experience in civil engineering and construction management with over 5 years of project experience in Southeast Asia. Master's degree from Columbia University and a bachelor's degree in architectural engineering from the University of Colorado, and a professional engineering license in the state of California. So with that, I'll turn it over to Daniel and Bryse, and thank you guys.
Thanks, Yana, for that intro, and welcome all. Thanks for participating today on this webinar. Essentially, what I want to lay out, what Bryse and I are trying to lay out for you, all of you today, is essentially some observations that we've had in the field, working in developing nations, and starting up our own firms overseas, and so it's a combination of our observations on actual projects and our observations on also collaborating with other organizations that are also in the same countries that we are working in. So I'll first start off with the presentation outline. And here, what we have basically laid out is some of the general challenges to development and how smaller locally based companies and organizations can overcome these challenges. And finally, how to help foster these locally based companies and organizations. So what are some of the challenges to international development? Those that have worked in the sector probably are well aware of these. And the three main challenges that we see are extensive, complex logistics, and some of the follow-up and local community support sometimes needs some better management of those two aspects on projects. The first laid out here is the challenges are expensive, very expensive. Why? Because of the administration costs that go into these types of projects. We're talking about travel, meetings, scheduling, coordination from the headquarters to the projects on the ground. Typically the headquarters are thousands of miles away or another continent. It eats up a lot of cash. That leads to overspending and ineffective internal controls. What do I mean by that? I mean that if essentially lessons learned is something that is, from what I've seen in the field, is something that needs some attention in the sense of what products in other countries or with other organizations or in other sectors, how can you use some of the shortcomings in those projects and leverage the information that you have gained on those projects and take it to another project in another country of the same, within the same sector. Let's say you're talking about a potable water project. Some of the shortcomings that you may have experienced on a project, maybe lack of community support or a pipe that may be bursting 10 years ahead of the design life. Those are some of the issues that one can document and hope to bring over on a project of the same type in another country or within the same country. And what I see time and time again is that there's no manuals that one can refer to assist individuals that are looking to work on the same types of projects. Expensive. This slide is explained in the following slide. Essentially what we're trying to present here is just the amount of money that typically is spent on an international development project. A lot of it goes to the headquarters or the foreign-based organization, and very little of that funding actually goes into the local labor force. But the bar chart below that shows the amount of labor that goes in terms of hours is vastly weighed toward the local side, and on the foreign or headquarters side, you see very little of the hours spent there. And that here we have the explanation of the previous slide, essentially saying that the company's headquarters in 4 countries, and the local participation accounts for the vast majority of the operations, yet most of the funds are earmarked for these products spent on administration. Another challenge are the logistics. This slide presents essentially the Byzantine organizational chart that one typically experiences when dealing with governmental agencies in developing countries. This is an example of Cambodian government structure here with a slew of ministers and sub-ministers, etc., deputy ministers. In Honduras, I can say that from my experience working in Honduras, we have several organizations that run in parallel. These are governmental agencies that many do the same thing, or sort of they step over each other's purview in the sense of, for example, in Honduras you have two agencies that deal with environmental regulation. One of them is called CERNA, the other one is ICF, and they both manage environmental issues, but when one works on a project, it's difficult to ascertain who to contact and what regulations to follow. The same goes with an organization called SOPRAVI. SOPRAVI is in charge of transportation, buildings, housing, and generally within that organization you have sub-agencies or sub-divisions that sort of compete against SOPRAVI, for example, FIS, F-H-I-S, Fondo Hondureño de Inversión Social. That organization should be in charge of smaller scale projects, but typically due to the funding issues and lack of funding thereof, you have individuals within the organizations of SOPRAVI and FIS that are generally battling against each other for funding, and so one also runs into the issue of what sort of standards to follow, what sort of codes to follow. That's always an issue when constructing in developing countries, at least in Honduras and in Cambodia. Some of the logistics that come into play here are other roadblocks to development. Here we have an example of a road, 258-kilometer road that began about 10 years ago. It has yet to be completed, and this is critical main line connecting the city of Bryse in western Honduras to the Tegucigalpa, the capital of Honduras. The road has not yet been completed yet. There are massive sections of roads that are suffering from severe spalling, cracking already. This is another example of challenges. This is a currently crematorium that serves a community of about 100,000 people in western Honduras, and the city, the municipality, received funding from various organizations, Central American Bank for Development, and some funding from Spanish foundations, and essentially they had all the money earmarked and ready to go on this project to essentially create a sanitary landfill, make the area cleaner, safer for residents, and but lo and behold, the public officials that were trying to sell the project to the community caused a schism and caused the project to actually not get off the ground after all the engineering studies had been completed. Lack of communication between funding agencies and local community members is sometimes very, very much a roadblock to development work. This is an example of a follow-up. This is the post-construction completion phase, maintenance and operation, a project shared between 6 communities. Camalote is the largest of the members of the community, and essentially, rather than embarking on a course where you would try to get all the communities together to attempt to come to an accord so all the community members can provide their labor, manpower, funds to keep the communal water supply system operation and maintenance. Camalote itself embarked on its own engineering study to create its own potable water supply system, and so this is a community that has very little money to fund it, and the regional intermunicipal organization that's supposed to coordinate infrastructure activities promoted or essentially did not take the route of trying to collaborate, trying to get the communities together to come to a new accord. Rather, they and parts of their own engineering study, which is probably going to run the construction of a fire room around $100,000, and that's just money that is not there. So follow-up and maintenance is a huge issue, and this is also a community buy-in issue. So how do you resolve some of these issues? This is a potable water project in Santa Cruz, San Manuel de Coloete, Honduras, where the sponsoring agency required the community to create a water tax collection vehicle that is managed by a board of directors that administer the taxes. These are members of the community that are elected to this to the board to manage the funds on behalf of the community and to manage the operation and maintenance of the water supply system to be built. This is an example of an irrigation service center in Cambodia. This is a organization that was structured essentially to specialize in the operation and maintenance and follow-up of infrastructure projects, in this case, irrigation projects. And essentially, it focuses on systems operation, the management and sharing of the system, the rules of the game, so to speak. Into the infrastructure, a collection vehicle, and the management of these funds, and external relations with other stakeholders is key. And how do you manage the institution itself so you continue to have a seamless transition of management throughout the years. And communities require long-term support to successfully implement these systems. That's essentially echoing some of the challenges that we face, and looking forward, that is one of the key pillars of the success of any infrastructure project in developing nations. With that, I'll pass it over to Bryse.
Hello, everyone. So what Dan's been talking about is it's been kind of some of the big challenges with development projects. And what we're going to, or the next part of the presentation is how partnering up with local organizations and companies can address some of these issues by being cheaper, having a better understanding of the context of the projects, and being the best position to perform the operations and maintenance after the project. Let's see. So, yeah, Dan talked a bit about the expense of sending in international companies. This is an example from the Asian Development Bank, how their salary ranges. And the international range is literally 3 times or more higher than the local consultants. And this is just to, kind of visualize that. But I mean, as Dan was saying, if you're flying somebody in, there's flights, travel expenses, accommodation, all those things in addition to this 3 times the size salary. And the other end of it is to say, well, for this project we need international expertise. And, from what my experience has been is that when projects are being planned from outside of the country, a lot of times people underestimate the level of capacity or expertise in country, and therefore weigh things to the international side more heavily than needed, and then waste quite a few resources by doing that. This next slide is a picture of my business partner, Matt Basinger, and to be honest, I don't even remember which country he was in. He was somewhere in Africa working on an engine, but just kind of to illustrate, when you're working very closely with the folks that are based in country, a lot of things, the problems get solved quicker. People have, people there have a much better idea of the challenges and typical challenges and how to solve those issues. So things are much more efficient. Again, with the understanding the context of the infrastructure. So there's a few different things going on in this photo of the canal, here. This is up in Battambang province in Cambodia. What happened with this project, this canal was meant to tap into a river and then supply water to this area for rice irrigation during the dry season. And when the first organization came through and built the canal, they built it at an elevation that was too high, so that when it was the dry season, the river water level dropped. It was too high to receive any water. So that culvert in the background, you see it's got two levels. That first level is the original elevation. And so when these guys were building this thing, they completely ignored the local farmers that were telling them, hey, you guys are building this too high. It's not going to work. And then they, wasted all this money and time building a canal that didn't work. And then another organization came back later, and then they dug it out deeper, and which is why you see that kind of small culvert below that culvert in the back. And but this thing is falling apart, and it's only a couple of years old because of what is the next issue is this lack of follow-up. Dan talked a little bit about Irrigation Service Center and or ISC, and these guys are a local NGO based in Cambodia who I think are really great, and they have, in some communities, they've spent more than 10 years working with farmers to get their operations and maintenance program up to a sustainable level, where the community is able to manage the project themselves, not only technically but also administratively, by collecting fees in a transparent way so that people trust it. And there's elections for the leaders of the water user group, and the fees that they collect from the farmers that are using the water go into funding the whole program. Now, it takes quite a while to get this system set up, but it actually does work in these areas. And the reason they're able to be successful is because they've been at it for such a long time and really understand the problems and challenges in the communities. So to summarize, the bulk of what this is about is to say, prioritizing local participation on these projects makes things a lot better, cheaper, more efficient, and just overall better understanding of the project. Some of the other things that Dan and I were talking about when we were coming up with these slides. The second one is, just making sure that follow-up phase, there's adequate resources allocated to the follow-up, so that, that example I was just talking about with ISC, bringing the community up to a level where they can manage the project themselves. There's a gap there between the end of the project and when the community is able to manage it and collect fees and do all those things. And it could take 3 to 5 years. And during that time, ISC or some organization is going to need to be funded to be able to to manage or do that training and do that. And a lot of times, people see the infrastructure as, okay, once we finish the building part, then it's done. And so people need to understand that there's pretty significant resources and time that need to go into that follow-up. And then, just another idea that we had was to have an innovation set aside in budgets for international projects that kind of carved out of the budget to say, okay, they're looking for grant proposals from local organizations or something like that. And these solutions aren't really, we didn't, this is something that we've been talking about, but USAID has a new initiative called USAID Forward that is really pushing USAID to partner up with local organizations, and so some of the organizations are really moving in this direction. So next, going to go through a little bit about advancing engineering and then pass it back to Dan so we can talk about his company, Emergent Engineers. So AE started, a group of us were working on the EWB USA project in New York City, and the idea of AE, it kind of came together with what we're talking about today, where a group of us said, hey, you know, one, we thought it was a lot of fun and wanted to keep doing it, but also that we thought that if we were based in country, we could be quite a bit more efficient and cheaper and do a better job on these projects. So the first project was a reservoir reconstruction. This is a photo of the Watergate. We started that in 2006 and finished in 2008, and then AE started in 2009. Main project types that we work on are related to water, infrastructure, and energy, alternative energy and distributed power type projects. The way that we're set up right now is that we have a U.S. registered company, and then our main base is in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, which is where I live. And the office there is mostly focused on civil and structural engineering. We've done quite a few canal projects with USAID and AusAid. In the last few months since that large garment factory collapsed in Bangladesh, we've gotten pretty involved with doing structural inspections for garment factories in Cambodia. And my business partner, Matt Basinger, is now based in Indonesia, and the idea there is to focus more on distributed power and alternative energy projects out in the eastern islands of Indonesia. But we're just kind of getting things up and going there. I think we literally finalized our company registration there this week. So it's just getting going. And as far as future plans go, we are, the focus for the next while is going to be building up the Indonesian office. But at the same time, we're kind of looking at Southeast Asia as a focus. And Myanmar, having opened up just in the last couple of years, the market there is kind of going crazy. And depending on what happens with projects, it's possible that we might start working in Myanmar in the next few months if the project comes through. But the goal is to just keep growing the company and around Southeast Asia and keep expanding. With that, I'll turn it back to Dan to talk about Emergent Engineers.
Thanks, Bryse. So Emergent Engineers was founded in 2012. Essentially, it's got the split corporate structure. It's got a USA-based LLC, limited liability company, and it's got a SRL, which is the counterpart entity in Honduras. You can see me there in the middle, and my two Honduran partners. The entity in Honduras is co-owned. We all share a third of the company, and I think that's a key component of Emergent Engineers, to have local participation on everything we do, not only on the product themselves, but also on the corporate structure and governance of the firm itself. What are we, essentially? What is the core of Emergent Engineers? It's a network of 100 plus professionals that sit there, but we actually have more than 200 now in our network. You can see there a little Facebook image window. What we do is we essentially have this network of professionals, those being engineers, architects, surveyors, professionals that are involved in the infrastructure, environmental, and energy space, power space. And so we essentially post opportunities on the Facebook page whereby we are looking for a specific type of professional. Could be somebody that specializes in water supply systems. So we actually post the need on our Facebook page, and then we receive feedback from our individuals within our network that believe they have the background to work on these projects. So they send their resumes, we vet their resumes, and then we forward our recommendations to the organizations that we're partnering with. The image on the right is an image of Honduras, and essentially what I'm going to present there is that we have projects in the darker blue areas of the country, and we have consultants, EE consultants, emerging engineers consultants in the green areas. So we want our consultants to be close to the projects. That's key. Not only on an international scale, but on a country scale. That's very important due to some of the communication and transportation issues that some of these countries face due to poor infrastructure in regards to roads, telecommunication, power, etc. This next slide, it shows a breakdown of the divisions within Emergent Engineers. We have a rural development consulting division. What does that do? Well, essentially we provide consulting to organizations, NGOs in rural areas that may lack the technical expertise to not only design projects, but also manage, prioritize, strategize. We're talking about municipal agencies, local development agencies that just don't have the manpower out there or the resources in regards to funds to hire a consultant to help them out with some of their infrastructure issues. The engineer partnering division, the goal of that division is to look for partnerships, bring organizations from other countries that may be looking for a local partner, and sort of liaise with them and the local projects. This could be anything from partnering up with another engineering firm to partnering up with a funding agency or a sponsoring agency, foundation, that may need technical assistance on their projects, or just somebody they can trust on the ground. And general consulting essentially is sort of their traditional consulting work. And essentially you have pictures here of some of the projects that I've worked on. Some of the community members, very, very, very motivated individuals, and they deserve the best, and we want to give them the best. And that's the goal of Emergent Engineers. One other aspect of Emergent Engineers that I think makes it unique is that we not only measure our performance from our financial metrics, those being operating margin or net income or revenues or whatever. We also measure our performance, our success by the number of individuals that we affect in our projects. We want to target projects that can affect the most individuals in a positive way. And so we want to ensure that the money that we are managing on projects is affecting the highest impact. And so we measure, we prioritize projects that are higher impact. It's not to say that we'll turn down a project that doesn't affect as many beneficiaries, but we want to consult partners in a way that can increase the performance of the project and the impact that the projects have. That's key for us. And so we have a social return on investment, SROI. This has been used on a number of different organizations, but we've actually brought it within the internal operations of the company, and that's the way we measure our performance. KPI is, somebody asked me the question right now, KPI is key performance metric, or key performance indicator, sorry, KPI. Emerging engineers, looking ahead, essentially we're towns and birds. We'd like to expand in other countries in Central America, Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador. Looking a few years further down the road, the Caribbean. And we believe that the proximity of these countries to the U.S. allows for some pretty massive scaling capabilities and synergies in terms of human resources. And what that can, the unlocking of that potential, I think, is very palpable in my opinion. And how about technical skill? Where do we want to take the company as far as operations are concerned? We have this database of talent. I just showed you our 200-plus network of professionals. We want to build our database of needs, organizations that are working in these countries that are looking for partners, are looking for people to help them on their projects. Building these relationships with funding organizations, NGOs, in-country development agencies, that's key. And the crux of the whole thing, the fulcrum of Emergent Engineers is really matching that talent with the needs of these funding and operational organizations on the ground. And this last slide is essentially provides some information on Bryse and myself, Advanced Engineering Consultants and Emerging Engineers. Please feel free to reach out to us with any follow-up questions or concerns. I think we're going to open up the floor here to questions, but feel free to contact us after the presentation is over.
Thank you so much, Daniel and Bryse. We really do appreciate, all of the information you're sharing with us today. I know a lot of this is obviously acquired through years of on-the-ground experience. So at this point, I would like to invite our participants to share their questions. Just a quick reminder, as you can see, a few folks have already entered questions into the Q&A window. So this will help us to sort out and manage all the inquiries. And we have a few that have already come in, primarily around the subject of finances. So question number one for both of you is regarding the methodology that you have found to be the most effective in allocating funding for your projects. And I'm going to expand on that a little bit as I was listening to your breakdown in terms of your budgets, and you noted the percentage guidelines for follow-up and innovation. I would love for you to expand a little bit for our audience and for myself as well on the notion of sufficient budgeting for follow-up and innovation, and just in general, what method you guys apply.
Dan, do you want to take that, or do you want me to go?
You can go, Bryse.
So for AE, we don't really fund projects. What typically happens is we're in a position where somebody comes out with an RFP, request for proposal or terms of reference, and say, okay, this is what we need to get done, and this is our budget, and send us a proposal. So for some projects when we have been able to be in a position to be an advocate for that follow-up phase or something like that, to say, okay, so you've got enough in the budget, or that's great that you want to build this thing, but for some of these canal projects we were working on with USAID, we were really pushing for that to include more local NGOs into the project to get the community participation up to where we thought it needed to be. But typically we're not in a position to make funding calls. I think that's usually more on the bigger consultants or the aid side of the project.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may add myself, we ourselves don't fund projects either, but we, in terms of funding, how to allocate funding, we advise organizations on the ground. I can give you one example of working with USAID on the ground in Honduras, where issues were identified during the program feasibility stage of a project, and infrastructure needs were identified that were not considered previously. So we go with the USAID representatives to these communities to identify some of the needs and how to address those needs, not only on the scale of materials and the engineering that's needed or the miles of pipe or whatever it may be, but also how much it's going to cost. We advise organizations on the estimating of these projects so they can properly allocate funds in a way that's accurate.
Right. So you get those recommendations, and therefore then you're able to establish some sort of guidelines. That's really helpful. We do have a couple of other questions coming in. So a lot of these are themed around finances. It's noted here by one of our listeners. Oh, thank you so much for that helpful slide. Thank you. The NGOs are considered dependencies, according to this one listener, which can't be relied for consistent funding. So I believe the question is, how do you maintain a steady financing scheme? What are other channels that you employ beyond NGO financing or the USAID financing, for example? Are there other channels?
For us, we work, our three main client types are NGOs, aid organizations like USAID or AusAid, and then private companies. And NGOs are actually the smallest client for us by revenue. It's pretty close to 50-50. It was in 2012 for private company and aid groups for us.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Great. Looks like. All right, maybe Bryse will contribute a little bit later. So, I'm seeing a few other questions come in. Give us just a moment here. How do you manage what you focus more on, either strategically with long-term planning or short-term planning and tactics? I suppose, how do you prioritize what projects you take on, considering that there's obviously quite a number of options?
I think that the priority comes, you work tactically short term to put a bridge the organization now to where you want the organization to be, 5 years from now. And so essentially you want to choose partners that, you have good stories and failures when you partner up with different firms. When I say partnering up, it could be a client, it could be an equal partner in a project. You want to identify those partners that are reliable, that being in provision of information, expanding clientele, or it could be as simple as just paying on time. And so you want to early on identify those reliable partners that can bring in a consistent revenue stream that can open up doors for future work. And that's how I identify, strategize who to partner up with.
So one of the questions that's come in that's speaking to failures, the notion of failures or the things that are less successful, how with these potential losses that you're incurring from, things that don't quite work out, is there a different budget to compensate for such failed initiatives?
Budget to compensate for the losses, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Bryse, go ahead.
I think, I don't know, I think that question doesn't really, it's a little bit difficult. I think it's not really, that person doesn't really understand the type of projects that we work on. Or at least us, people hire us to perform a job, and we either design a system or monitor construction. But we're not an NGO where we're coming up with these new project plans and trying to to make something up, and then if it fails or succeeds, then we either fail or succeed. We're just kind of taking on project by project. So, does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I see a question here that's from Frankfurt, if I can answer that question.
Sure. Please go ahead.
It's an interesting question you asked. So how do I quantify SROI, which is the social return on investment, and how are the components, what components do I use to measure, not necessarily how many people are impacted, but the positive transformative impact that these projects produce. And essentially, just to give you a little background on SROI, there are many different levels, many different metrics one can use on infrastructure projects. In my case, you start off with as basic as kilometers of road built or paved, or gallons of water per minute that our community receives from our infrastructure projects. Then come the first order effects, which are, well, now you have better drinking water. You have a healthier community. And what are the second order effects? You can have now better access to hospitals because roads are paved. And then that essentially creates a healthier set of communities, or has regional effects. So these second, third order effects are somewhat hard to measure, but they are measurable and they can be done. And so one of the things that Emergent Engineers is trying to capture, we're trying to develop a set of metrics that can not only measure, not only keep track of how, the hard infrastructure projects that are built, and keep track of how that money is spent, but also keep track of that money that's spent and the positive second, third order effects that money can have on a regional scale. And so therefore, you can better prioritize how you spend money on international development projects, rather than just using a blanket approach, just doing a program with $80 million and just trying to target one country in general. I mean, you got to be strategic in the way, tactical in the way you target your money, and you got to have, again, a lessons learned, or a way to measure or forecast how that money will affect a region. I don't know if that answers the question, Frank, but somewhat lengthy answer. It's basically a work in progress on metrics, and I'd love to get some feedback from you on your experiences on the ground.
That's really a great answer, and SROI metrics and some guidance on how to monitor and actually report out on those, and I think would be very appreciated by a number of the folks that are participating in the webinar today and beyond. Do you have a sense of when you're going to be sharing some of these guidelines based on your work with Emergent Engineers?
Yes, by all means, I have a spreadsheet that is way too big, massive, but it's hopefully I'll be able to get it in a format that is usable by everybody. But yeah, I'd be happy to share what I have so far. It's a pretty interesting piece of work.
Fantastic.
And you can actually see it. You can actually see the front end of it on our website if you go to our website.
Very cool. Just like an engineer to pull in the spreadsheet. So I'm going to kind of shift gears here a little bit. We have a couple of questions that have come in that are a little bit more personally directed with respect to your career trajectories for both Bryse and Daniel. So the first part of the question is, how have your past professional experiences in the U.S. and volunteer experience aligned into your current work, your current professional direction? And how do you look at international development work differently now that you're doing it professionally? And both of you can comment on that.
Yeah, I see that's from Circle. I think staying in the U.S. after university and working there, and is pretty critical before jumping into the international realm. I think I have friends that went straight from university to international, and I mean, some people do great depending on the experience, but having that first world experience as a base is pretty valuable, especially for engineering. Just to see how things are supposed to be done, because most projects and the way people work in a lot of developing countries is kind of doing best with limited resources, and so having an idea of what it should look like if you did have the resources and striving for that is pretty good, or a good goal. As far as my perspective on international development work, now that I'm doing it professionally, I mean, I like to think I'm not too jaded or anything like that. A lot of folks get into it and have a lot of, can become pretty cynical. I mean, I still enjoy it quite a bit, and, you certainly see a lot of projects and organizations and companies doing things that you might not be happy about, but I do really enjoy being over there and doing this type of work. And having done it now for a while, I feel like I'm getting better at it and learning more, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Thank you. Daniel?
I think for me, it's the thing that strikes me most about the work that I've done and the people that I've met is just the consistency in the caliber of professionals that I meet overseas, and so I'm impressed with what I see there, and I think the future is ripe for a regional movement, I guess, towards more collaboration. We're talking about the Caribbean Basin, Latin America, and I think it's very promising, and I like the move that I made, and I think that what it's done for me is just opened up my eyes to the potential, huge potential, regional.
I'm sure that's very encouraging for many of our participants today to hear. So with that kind of in mind, another question that's related to your career trajectories and based on some of your past experience, this listener noted that you both created companies from university experiences, something that came out of immediately or shortly after you graduated. Do you still work with universities, international universities in those states, to provide experiences for students through project partnerships or internships?
As a matter of fact, one of our partners is affiliated with one of the major schools, College of Engineering schools in Honduras. He was actually a professor there. And he, on occasion, reaches out to his students on projects and to reach out to them for ideas and for assistance on coming up with solutions to some of the projects that we're chasing.
All right. So just FYI, there's some private Q&A going on here as well regarding some information about USAID. Sorry, so Bryse, did you want to comment as well on the university partnership?
Yep. We don't really have close ties with universities in the U.S. When MIT, their D-Lab comes over to Cambodia, once a year or something like that, and we meet up with them and catch up. And we do these engineering kids workshops, and so they help us out with some of that. But we don't, we sometimes get contacted about university students in the U.S. or in developed countries interested in coming over, and we tend to try to hire local engineers at a university or interns rather than having folks come from the U.S. and coming over.
And that's very fair considering the way that you're positioning both of your organizations and how you're emphasizing the need for capacity building in country and also recognizing capacity locally and engaging those trained entrepreneurs in your work. So kind of segueing quickly into that as we are out of time, and I understand that some folks do have to hop off, but I think this is a very key question. And the notion of underestimated capacity in country by a lot of other organizations where you guys are trying to kind of change the paradigm. One question I have is, how do you actually identify these either individuals or organizations that you engage in working with your organization? Do you seek them out for recommendations, tap into specific networks, or now that you've built up a network of your own, is it kind of just go to your own network? If you can speak to that as quickly as possible.
Yeah, for us, go ahead, I'm sorry.
For me, it's essentially, we are located in Tegucigalpa and Garcia, which is Emergent Engineers. Essentially, we use a top-down and bottom-up approach in Tegucigalpa. My partners are reaching out to major international institutions, knocking on their doors, trying to see if there's opportunity to partner up on a corporate strategic level. And then on the ground in Garcia, we identify projects, we identify some of the players that are working on these projects, and we offer our assistance on these projects on an operational level. So identified both ways. I mean, again, you have your failures and you have your successes. So you weed out the organizations that don't produce, or and then you essentially start building up a short list of key players that you can look to strategically and into the future to grow as a company.
Fantastic. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of hit and miss for us. It's just taken a lot of time to work with people and meet people that we like, and we kind of build that in, or try to build that into, or hiring a new engineer or working with a new organization, that we don't jump in with both feet, but kind of feel them out first, and then continue working with the people that we really like. So just taking a bit of time.
Yeah, somewhat of a phased approach, trial period, I suppose.
Yep. That definitely makes it easier.
I'm sure there's a lot more lessons learned and a lot more recommendations and insights that these two individuals can provide to all of the folks that are listening. I know we are at time, and I'd like to thank both Daniel and Bryse for letting us keep them a little bit longer, and for challenging both our perceptions on what it means to work in development consulting, this emerging field, I suppose. I'd like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar. You can check out more webinars on our webinar page listed here. For those of you who are looking to get your PDHs, please use the code listed here and send an email to eab-ceuadmin@IEEE.org. I do apologize that we couldn't get to all of your questions today. There are quite a number coming in. So for those of you who still want to get some answers, please feel free to reach out to our presenters or by emailing us at webinars@engineeringforchange.org. We look forward to seeing all of you on our next webinar on September the 10th. And thank you all again for your attention and for bearing with us through technical difficulties and distances. Thank you, everyone.